Well, I mean, it's not as if Islam is the only religion that pulls that crap, though.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
You know, you take a look at Catholicism or Christianity or any of that, they are always threatening people with hell. Always. I mean, it's
criticism
like,
just becomes synonymous with like bigotry. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry. It's like the Pope does this stuff all the time. When they were basically getting scrutiny because they were covering up and moving and shuffling around child rapists and giving them access to new victims, and they were getting called on this. They were basically, at one point, this archbishop in Rome actually compared themselves to the Jews on the bus to like Auschwitz. I mean, that is just so freaking tasteless.
well, and worse than that, it's hypocritical because it's not like they're not in power or anything. They're totally in power. They're not in any danger whatsoever, and they're acting like we're on our way to Auschwitz. Come on,
Oh, come on. Nobody's loading them up on cattle
This is the
carts.
problem with a religion whose patron saint is a martyr.
Yeah.
You know, is they are not happy unless they're set upon by other people, unless they're in danger, which they're really not, but they have to be in their minds.
That's one of my beefs with religion, is that it does create this sort of us versus them sort of tribal dichotomy. This is the other. This is somebody that. It's weird though too, especially with Christianity, especially in a country where Christianity is so much a part of the national culture in a lot of ways. Not the official, federal, government culture, because we are a secular country that is neutral on, at our best and what we're supposed to legally be. But it's amazing that somebody who, they're part of a religion that the president has to invoke, at least ostensibly, that they are part of this faith, that if they don't, it's going to create a controversy, that both the major candidates for president have to go be interviewed by Rick Warren before. I mean, it's treated like he's some sort of gatekeeper to the White House. And it's like, I'm sorry, at what point are you actually persecuted by any definition in this country?
Yeah, oh, exactly. I mean, they flip out when they're like, we need to make sure that the president is religious, to the point where political people have to lie about their religion. I mean, that being a requirement is just not okay in my book. I'm sure there's politicians who are lying their butts off about whether or not they're religious. There has to be.
It's the same thing with, are you so persecuted against? Okay, ask yourself this. Imagine that you were going to put on, mention at a job interview or in some college entrance essay that you were the head of a church youth group. Ask yourself, is that going to help or hurt your odds of getting that job? Now say that you were the president of a college atheist organization. I know this because I mentioned Libby had said this to me at one point too at a job interview when they asked her for any examples of her doing public speaking. And she had this show, but she didn't know how to phrase it. Because I'm sorry, there is I wouldn't necessarily call it persecution necessarily, but there is prejudice against atheists.
Oh, no, I agree.
And she basically said, I'm on a show that's about skeptical inquiry. Because she didn't want to say the A word. The A word does have social costs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, saying that you're a Christian and you go to church is not going to hurt you at all. In fact, people who want power in this country will at least pretend to be that.
Well, I mean, I'm a computer CGI artist, and when I try to look for work and people ask me, well, what have you been doing while you're out of work? If I want to say to them, well, I have a YouTube channel, they're going to ask me what it's about. And if I say atheism, well, chances are that could really hurt, my chances at getting that job, because so many people in this world are kind of religious, well, fairly religious, even if they're just casually religious. And that could definitely hurt my chances as far as, getting a job as a graphic artist. And so I'm never really sure what to say. I'm never sure what to put on a demo reel for a prospective employer, because I have, a couple hours worth of YouTube videos, but they're all about atheism, except for my Weird Thoughts videos, which are just funny and silly. But, what do you do with that? How do you tell people this is what I can do, but I'm using my powers for evil? You know?
I mean, I've encountered, this isn't just like I'm applying for a job at like World Vision or the Discovery Institute. It's amazing how quickly just mentioning your atheism to a stranger can change the tone of the discussion. I mean, one of the things, and I've repeated this a bunch of times with people, is I took a gender studies class a while back. This was probably the condensation of some of the most liberal, tolerant, progressive people that I've ever seen. This is one where, when we talked about certain, like, persecution or prejudice against people who are intersex, queer, transgendered, It was amazing. Everyone, it was like that Republican debate where everyone was jumping on Ron Paul. It was just like I want to attack him. Ooh, me. It was like that. Everyone wanted to be the person to first attack that kind of persecution. This is the most liberal, tolerant group. It was really kind of good. So you're talking about what is a prism you shoot other people, your empathy for other people's persecution through? And I'm a heterosexual white male. What have I got? I've got my atheism. That's all I got. That's the one minority status I have. And say that I know what it feels like to be excluded. I know what it feels like to mention what I am and have somebody start to treat me completely differently. I know what it is where I'm getting along with somebody in a party and they ask me what I do on weekends. Oh, I do an atheist show. I know that feeling. And so I mentioned that, saying that I know what it feels like to do that. So when I see somebody doing that to somebody else, I feel it keener because I have that shared experience. I mentioned my atheism to this class as my way of understanding that, how I understand how other people are persecuted. It is amazing how quickly people started staring at their shoes. This is an incredibly liberal group. It was like I had passed the hat around asking for donations to like Al-Qaeda or something. Or saying, oh, and by the way, I'm a child molester. That was kind of like how it responded. There was just everyone was immediately silent and everyone just wanted me to shut up.
Well, and the funny part is how well I would have fit into that group myself. I mean, I'm adopted, multiracial, lesbian, and an atheist. So, that would be, yeah. But at least you would have had one atheist in that class. If I'd been there, to go, oh.
Actually,
okay.
that's kind of the cool story. Is that at the end of that, when actually I finished the class, you have no idea how many atheists in that class were. Like 3 different people came out to me as an atheist in private after that. Like, oh, by the way, I'm glad you said that. So it's amazing, and that's one of the reasons we do this show. I think it's really important. So anyways, we should probably get to the topic soon, but it looks like we actually have an email.
Oh,
what have we got here?
Is this from anybody?
Okay, so I thought this is from Mike H. I thought this is awesome. Let's hear your take on the matter. It says, city puts cost of Quran burning security at $200,000, sends bill to the church. As you might know, there's Terry Jones, not related to the Monty Python guy. He had this thing where he wanted to basically be a dick in public and burn a bunch of Qurans. He has every right to be offensive. However, it's amazing how much of basically a shitstorm this guy stirred up. Basically, the city and the authorities basically set the cost of the security that they had to put in place at $200,000, and now they're sending it to Terry Jones. I think that's really awesome. But I remember he canceled the event, but I think that's hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's great.
If you want to do it, you might as well pay for it. If he's willing to pay that much money, I'm sure there's enough backwards, bigots and hillbillies from Bumblefuck, Virginia that want to pay for that. They'll pass the straw hat around. I'm sure that they'd be happy to.
Indeed. Although the one thing I still want to know about these people is, first we have Sarah Palin, now we have Terry Jones. Why are they stealing Monty Python names? These crazy people keep stealing. I'm just waiting for Elizabeth Cleese or Charlie Gilliam or something. I'm just wondering what that's about.
Yeah, seriously. I remember even John Cleese saying something like he missed the day when Michael Palin was the funniest
Palin, yep.
Yeah. So anyways, we should probably move on to the topic.
Indeed.
As we mentioned, Kate here, aka BionicDance on YouTube, has created a lot of videos, and we're gonna start talking about one of those topics on faith. So let's play her video, and we will talk about it.
This is a very good example of the sort of thing you might see on my channel if you're not familiar with it. So let's suppose for a moment that there are 2 people having religious experiences. One of them is actually communing with a deity, and one is just hallucinating, perhaps even crazy, just talking to themselves. How do you tell which is which? Now let's suppose you're one of those people. How do you tell which one you are? Are you the one hallucinating, or are you having a genuine experience? By what manner and criteria do you distinguish a real religious experience from your imagination running away with you and being taken too seriously? Most religious people would probably argue that it's faith that tells them which is which, but faith doesn't answer anything because faith is belief without proof. What's the difference between faith and make-believe, between believing something without proof and playing pretend? The word faith is tricky because it has multiple definitions. It could be argued that I have faith in my friends, but that kind of faith, or trust, is based on past experience, which is evidence of a sort. And it's about behavior, not existence. This is a very different kind of faith than the sort needed to believe that religion is true and God exists. At its heart, religious faith is belief without proof or evidence, belief that a God exists, and that he, she, it, or they have interacted with us, if only in our own heads. And since this belief comes with no reliable way to verify its truth value, many religious people don't question it, don't subject it to the kind of critical scrutiny with which we'd examine anything else in life. The question here is not about the knowledge you have, but rather about how you're certain it's correct. Can you verify what you believe outside your own head in a way that you can prove to someone else whether they share your beliefs or not? And assuming a God does exist, why does he, she, it, or they want faith, belief without proof, so very badly? If a God doesn't exist, the importance placed on faith by religion makes perfect sense. They frighten you into believing with threats of hell for those who doubt. God doesn't have to be real to get your frightened loyalty. Looked at objectively, religion sounds a lot like a scam. But if a God does exist, if the omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent God of Abraham is real, why would he demand belief without proof, remaining hidden from mankind? How does your believing in him without proof benefit him? What possible use could he have for it? An omnipotent being shouldn't need anything, not even your belief. An omnibenevolent being shouldn't allow people to be cast into eternal torment just for not getting what he wanted from them. And I doubt the benevolence of a God who hides from you when believing in him is the most important thing you could ever do. That God doesn't sound like a nice guy. In fact, we don't even have evidence that your God is benevolent at all. The Bible could be propaganda, completely untrue, and God could actually be a sadistic rat bastard. For all you know, God and the devil could be like rival deities, and Satan just lost an advertising war, a cosmic version of Coke versus Pepsi, McDonald's versus Burger King. And you only have faith to tell you that it's not, and the only certainty faith brings is false. The only knowledge worth trusting is the kind that has a basis outside of our own heads. The importance placed on faith by the religious is one of the most perplexing and vexing aspects of religion, and it's the main reason why I cannot be religious myself. Never mind scripture, some of which I find morally repugnant, it's the requirement that I believe without a good reason, and without objective evidence of a God's existence, that's the ultimate deal breaker for me when it comes to religion. And I'm absolutely perplexed that it isn't a deal breaker for the rest of the world as well, to be perfectly honest. I eagerly invite any theist to make sense of this for me, to explain to me how faith can possibly be had by any thinking person, why it should be considered a good thing, and why any deity should possibly want it as much as the Abrahamic God is alleged to. I mean, what am I missing?
So yeah, it's kind of amazing. I mean, I've heard a couple good definitions of faith. Both of them are basically from Sam Harris, who's one of my favorite writers on it. One of them, he says, is faith is basically the license religious people give themselves to keep believing something when reasons fail.
Yeah, or even if it's just something that pops into their head and sounds good.
I mean, how do you, I mean, what is the line between, say, a hallucination? I mean, somebody's having a psychotic episode, and they're actually having a genuine experience. Well, how do you even tell that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is the question I have is how do you tell when your experience, if it's only inside your head, if it's not happening outside where other people can observe it, then you can only have faith that it's real. You might be hallucinating, someone might have drugged you, you might have just had a really bad dream, or it could be real. How do you tell? The only way to really tell, the only way to distinguish is to have objective evidence, is to have something outside of your own head that will show you, where you can test it, you can point to it, and other people will go, oh yeah, I see that too.